Work-life balance is dead. Welcome to the SPaMCAST. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Many firms are bringing everyone back to the office and demanding longer hours. They're conflating effort and productivity. Increasing productivity is necessary for profitability and growth, but this isn't what you think it is. The panel today includes Jeremy Berrio, Daniel Doron, Jeremy Willets, Brad Biddorf. Before we dive in, Mastering Work Intake sponsors the Software Process and Measurement Cast. Jeremy Willets and I wrote Mastering Work Intake. We'd love you to buy a copy because, very frankly, poor work entry, things like starting everything, means actually finishing much less than you should. That, again, puts more impetus on people to say, hey, you need to do more. Work-life balance is dead. Take control, buy a copy, link in the show notes. Are you ready to pick out who's Brad Biddorf? It's time for the conversation. Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast. We have a great panel today. Jeremy, Daniel, Brad, and myself. Say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. Hi, Tom.
Excellent. So, I would like to suggest that we are back to the time in the wonderful business cycle that work-life balance discussions are dead. Doesn't exist. Never really happened. Work-life balance is dead. Play on.
Play on.
Well, I sent you something today to take a look at. One of the things that struck me was the company, the AI company that was in there, that basically said, "Hey, if you're not if you're not in 6 days a week in the office, working 6 days a week, 80 hours a week, you're fired. Go home. We don't believe in this work-life balance stuff. Our job is to deliver this technology, and that's all that matters." Having grown up with electronic data systems in the 1980s, back when one of the last times that we had a squeeze on the labor market, so that the labor market, was, you couldn't get a job. I say this and people think it was apocryphal. We put in upwards to 130 hours a week worth of work. And that was expected. And if you didn't do it, you got your ass fired. Just simple as that. I had a conversation with my wife last night as we were driving to a date night to a brewery. We had a conversation. She's owned multiple businesses. And she said, all of this crap about, and she used that word, about work-life balance, it was not something I ever believed in. It was, it was billability. If you fell below 72% billability, you were going to get talked to. And very frankly, if we agreed to a date, you made the date, maybe we're all living in a fever dream. But I'd say that when AT&T says everybody back in the office by September 12th, or you're fired, and AI firms, not just a couple of them to understand, said 80 hours or die. This fever dream of work-life balance that happened in the 20s is over.
Well, Tom, just to relate to Jeremy from Toronto there, Doug Ford's government has ordered everybody from the provincial government back to work 5 days a week, September 1st.
Rock and roll.
Here's the interesting thing about that, just to add to that, is that they just signed a new collective bargaining agreement I think last month, with all that, because I have a student in my jiu-jitsu class who works for the government, and we were talking about it, and they just signed a new agreement, and it didn't have be in the office for 5 days come September 1st, and now Doug Ford's saying that. So, Daniel, I think there's going to be some lawsuits thrown around over the next little bit over that, because but it
never was included in a collective agreement.
Yep.
Anywhere, anytime, ever. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever, there's going to be some lawsuits. I agree. But until those lawsuits are solved, they are back to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to drag this, and they're going to drag this. And then if they win, let's say the union wins, then you're going to see some performance improvement programs for each and every employee. And things are going to go, things are not going to get rosier anytime soon.
Hasn't work-life balance always been a context-dependent thing, depending on your role, your business, the field you're in? I mean, I remember the place that Tom and I used to work. When I got there were these core values hanging on the wall, and work-life balance was one of them. And when I started, I was a bit of a lowly technical writer on a Scrum team, and I had great work-life balance. I came into work every day at 9 a.m., drank some coffee, wore my headphones, wrote about software, went home at 5. Didn't have to worry about checking email on off hours. But as I got more experience, as I changed roles, all of a sudden I had a company cell phone. And before I left that place, I was finding myself working weekends just to keep up with what I had. So, like, have you guys witnessed that? Have you guys seen that as well?
I was working during September 11th, 2001. And all of a sudden we had a bunch of people volunteering to sleep in the office and get done what needed to be done to help out the country. The other example I can think of is I go back all the way to first generation cellular phones. And although I was on the team that made the mobile phone, I knew people that worked on the transmitter cell sites. And they were about to demonstrate their first handoff. And they had a very big deadline for that. One of my colleagues, I believe, worked a 139-hour week out of 168. And he successfully demonstrated the technology and then came in the next week for about a day, completed the work week, and day and a half, because he started on Sunday, and went and left the office for the rest of the week, because that was his form of work-life balance. He needed that recovery time. Depends on the situation. It depends on.
Oh, I agree. So we're in a situation where we as employees really don't get to call what work-life balance is. Our company and our company's context will dictate that to us. I was a consultant, and it was never acceptable to have a work-life balance. Again, that was part of the conversation last night. Yeah, we're boring people. We have those kind of conversations. And it was, I flew away. I worked hopefully as much as I humanly could. And I flew back, sometimes on Saturday. And if I could get 80 hours worth of billing in, I got 80 hours worth of billing in, because I got paid that way. And, the more I made, the more my handlers made, and the more they made, the more they liked me, and the more apt I was to get the good jobs. We've gone through a period, right, of economic growth, of abundance. There were more jobs than there were people, all of those kinds of things. And that does not seem to be the case right now. When that happens, can't you just rest on, hey, if Freddie was here, Freddie would tell us that he, really, really likes the hybrid scenario. And he probably would resist working for places. The head of AT&T, who said everybody back in the office or you're gone, they're not going to have a choice. If you want to work there, or you want to work for some period of time until you can find something else, you have no choice.
Well, it's also going to create some opportunities.
Ooh, how?
To the extent, well, listen to me. To the extent that older workers are willing to go back to the office, and those who are not willing to go back to the office will probably leave their job. And that will create opportunities for older workers who have problems finding work to actually get back into the workforce. So that is one positive aspect that I see to this situation, because some will not be willing to say, I'm not going back 5 days a week. Bye-bye, I'm going elsewhere. And this is going to create a vacuum of jobs that, older workers will be saying, hey, I don't mind going back to the office 5 days a week. And it will create opportunities for people who are struggling to find work as they grow older.
Interesting.
It's also possible that those older workers, depending on their level of experience, won't have to go back to the office at all. I'm sure all of you can think of examples of places that you've worked or people that you've known who have some level of maturity and seniority that they've pulled the, I don't want to go back to the office card. I'm going to leave and quit the company if you don't let me work remotely. I bet
But you're the only one that knows COBOL.
Exactly. So like I've seen this pattern at multiple places now, where the more privileged or higher up the org chart you are, the more you have the ability to say, I'm not going into the office. I'm going to work from whatever location I want, and maybe I'll see you on a random Monday.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the older workers who are struggling.
Okay.
And I agree with Daniel. I think there are classes of workers, whether they're privileged or not, will probably have to come into the office so they can break back in. Now, I will agree with you, Jeremy. And again, another piece that I read, and I think this was in the Wall Street Journal recently, that when people are talking about back to the office and all of that stuff, that doesn't mean anyone with director and above. They can work from home. They can work remotely. It is just the people doing the work that have to come back in the office, not the C-level execs.
That is one of the first things I thought about, right, when you sent the little seed article, was that you can't just say that you're going to change a culture. There needs to be an example for it, right? And word will get around if a leader is not following their own directions. But you also have a point that leadership is always assumed to be traveling, or they're in another country, or there's some reason that they can't come into the office right now. I don't know where to go with that one.
Yeah. Well,
on a trip to find them.
So back 5 years ago, we all had to work. We all had to leave the office, obviously, because people government said, okay, everything's shut down, work from home, all that fun business. So there was that automatic
5 years
huge
ago.
swing.
Recognize that was 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeesh.
So we had a huge swing. Before, we were sort of not everyone every day in the office, but it started to swing a little bit. It's like, okay, you can work from home a little bit every once in a while. It's not that big of a deal because we know you can get work done. And then we had the massive swing go to the side saying, okay, get your laptop at home and start working from home. And that was for a couple of years. And then it's kind of, come in the office 1 day a week, hybrid, all that fun business. And now we're starting to shift back. And instead of going back to the middle to what it was back in 2019, we have now shifted. We've gone all the way to the other side, back to like the early 1990s, where it's like everyone at your desk, do your work. I don't care. You got to get your crap done. And I think that swing is going to last. It'll last for probably maybe at most a year. And then people are either going to get burned out because they're working 80 hours a week. I would tell AT&T to take a flying leap on that one. I have my personal life and things that I like to do, and I'm not working to live, I'm living. Right? And eventually, to Daniel's point, it's like, yeah, the younger people are people who just don't want to do it. We're like, fine, I'll find somewhere else. And there'll be opportunities. I know there'll be opportunities.
No, there won't. Why do you say that? Why do you say
no? Because other companies will sit there and say, hold on, we can get people that do this, do the work that we need. We don't need, small startups or small businesses where they can just get people to work remotely. They'll pick them up. They don't have an office to fill out, to feel the need to fill out an office. They just need people to work.
Okay. I don't think that fills up. I don't think that there's enough of that demand. But let's say there was. Do you think they pay the same amount? Do they have the same benefits as these larger firms? Is that acceptable that we have a deflation in the market?
Depends on the business, but it also depends on, are you willing to take maybe a pay cut just to have a good life and not burn yourself out? And here's the other thing. So you have businesses, okay, fine. You have the packages, you have the people doing the 8 hours a week. What are you going to do when everyone burns out?
Get new people. Again, the fundamental premise that I think we're being sold, whether we like it or not, is that we are all cogs in the machine. and that what happens when the cog in the machine breaks? You get a new cog. And if we have a glut on the market, of agile coaches, or we have a glut on the market of Python programmers, do you care if one burns out?
Then why would I want to work for a boss that treats like people like that?
Because that's where the jobs are. You worked for a bank. I'm going to tell you, did that bank love you?
No, I worked for 3 banks and went 3 banks, 1 insurance company, and 1 medical EHR company. And the medical EHR, it was a small company. They treated me way better in the 3 years I was there than the 20 some odd years I was with the other companies, with the banks, insurance.
I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
No,
it is not. It is not that I believe, and not that I haven't done the other thing. And
I mean, Jeremy brings up a good point, though. It's like every one of us is going to have to evaluate our own appetite for tolerance of that attitude, Tom, that you just espoused. But also, we're going to have to put a price on how remote work means to us and what remote work means to us. If we feel that remote work is so valuable, such an inextricable part of our identity for whatever reason, whether it's you don't live in a big city, you have people that need caregiving at home, or perhaps you do take a pay cut. Perhaps you are willing to hop around job to job to job if you get laid off from one place or another. I think we're all going to have to do some self-reflection and determine how much that concept means to us and how much we value it.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like full-on remote work is like the best thing, depending on where you are. Like, I'd like to see people face-to-face every once in a while. We need that interaction. But to force my hand saying, you have to come into the office 5 days a week. And if I'm at the office 5 days a week, and let's just say 80% of the time, I'm just sitting there, I walk in, sit at my desk, stare at my computer, get out of my desk and walk out. Why can't I do that at home?
The return to the office thing is like a strong arm tactic in some ways to just get people to quit so you don't have to lay people off. I've heard that before. I believe that. I believe that for some businesses it totally is.
Yeah, I agree.
They don't want to lay people off and look bad in the news. So they come up with these draconian mandates to get back in the office 5 days a week and expect that 1% or 2% of their staff will look at that and go, no, thank you, I'm leaving.
I agree.
Well, and the other thing they got to take into account is, again, most people have been working from home for a very long time, barely came into the office. You bring everyone to the office, your work culture has changed for 5 years. Now you're trying to force it back, and you're going to have a completely different work culture in the office. And if you think that it's going to be all sunshines, lollipops, and unicorns, nope. I think you're going to run into a lot of problems. And I've had a client work with me now just for that reason. They're bringing more people into the office, and they're not kind of strong arming them. They're just kind of suggesting to them that they should come in, but I'm working with them to help change the culture back so that it's more productive. So they know how to speak to one another face to face. I'm sure, unlike most of us here who have our cameras on while we're recording this, we can see each other's faces. I'm almost certain, because I've seen it, where all Zoom meetings, maybe 1-2 people out of 10 might have their camera on. So you don't really see any faces. All you see is a name.
Yep.
So going into the office, it's going to be completely different.
Most of us.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being face-to-face and being on a Zoom meeting. Because when I'm on a Zoom meeting and my camera is on, I tend to wander around, and but when I'm face to face, that doesn't happen. So the Zoom, I think, is terrible when you turn on your camera, because you're distracted, your mind wanders around. It's totally uncomfortable.
Interesting. Okay. I think most of us on this call lived in a world before 5 years ago, and that just still floors me when I think about that. Before 5 years ago, where you got up in the morning, you brushed your teeth, hopefully, you drank some coffee, you might have eaten your oatmeal or your porridge or whatever, you drove into work, and then at lunch, maybe you had lunch with your team, maybe you just ate your lentils somewhere else. I don't know. Sorry, just having fun. And then you did go home, and that's what you did. That was the expectation when you graduated from university or graduated from grad school or whatever, that you would do that for the next 120 years before you retired. Are we being asked, just because we had this interregnum of everybody working from home, then the hybrid experience, which when the hybrid started, I think I was probably even one of those that said, it's never, we're never ever going to go back to the office. I wouldn't have if I didn't have to, right? Is that just an interregnum that because that's the culture of corporate work in the world, not just here in the States or in Canada, but that's that's a culture of corporate work that we're all going back to the office sooner or later anyway, regardless of our ideas.
There are macroeconomic consequences,
Ooh.
like downtown offices being empty. People pay for the rent. And the restaurants, people who live off, workers coming out to grab a bite or something like that, they are struggling as well. And this has to, in terms of the life of a city, has to be taken into account. There's a restaurant I used to go to, and I still do. They had the best mac and cheese in Montreal. I mean, $25. And they're not doing them anymore because there's not even enough people, and it doesn't pay for them to leave the oven on for 3-4 hours during the day. And many restaurants have closed downtown because of that shortage of affluence. So there are consequences to this working from home attitude that we have, and making the beat of the cities downtown, the downtown of the cities, struggle. I like going to work. Honestly, I like going to work. Yeah, I take the bus. I walk 15 minutes to take the bus. I take the bus half an hour, and then I walk 20 minutes to go to work. It gets me moving. I find nothing wrong with that.
I mean, an alternate example to your point, Daniel, is the big city that Tom and I live near, that Brad used to live near. Within the last post-pandemic time period, one of the Fortune 50 companies that calls our city home built a giant skyscraper downtown. It altered the Cleveland skyline. And, they were a company that was completely remote during the pandemic. They were a company that started to call people back a couple years ago and recently announced the 5-day a week, you're going to come downtown and work on our new office building thing.
All right.
And I'm sure that area of town, I've not been down there recently, but I'm sure that area of town will start to thrive as they have a giant skyscraper full of people eating at restaurants, hanging out at the different sports stadiums after work. I'm sure that area of town will start to thrive because those people have been called back to the office.
Yeah.
Kind of goes both ways, though. There's that insurance company that does a lot of advertising that bought a bunch of buildings on the east side, have built some.
Yes.
And is now closing most of them.
Yes.
So
it does. You are right, Brad.
We have, and the organization I used to work for, when they called people back to the office, they found they no longer had enough offices for all the people.
That happened to my son-in-law. He not only did they have not enough desks when he was called back, there was also not enough parking in
also true.
Also in the Navy Yard at the same time. So I don't know. People then ended up having to call in sick because they'd been driving around looking for parking for several hours. So,
and for Toronto, like I know post pandemic, downtown was a bit of not too much of a ghost town, but there were a few restaurants and shops. Especially we have downtown Toronto in our main Union Station for trains and subway. There is what they call the Path, which is just an underground path between Union Station all the way up to like about 4 or 5 blocks. You could walk that before, and there were small shops left, right, and center. The food courts were always busy. Post-pandemic, I remember I went down to see a client, and it was empty. There was still a few people, but not as busy as it was. Fast forward about 3 years, I saw another client about 4 months ago. Same path. The shops were not all of them were closed. There were some new ones that opened up, and the food courts were now busy. It was a pain in the ass for me because I had to find a seat to sit with my colleague and have a coffee with. But this was before the whole must come in 5 days a week. So what they did was a hybrid. It was busy to begin with. Now you're pushing everyone to go in 5 days a week. Now you're going to run into the problem like you talked about, Tom. Maybe there's going to be not enough desks. Maybe now we're going to have issues with parking. I think it's just going to snowball to the point where they're going to be like, do you know what? This is too much of a pain in the butt. Let's go back to hybrid. Like I said, I think we're going to go back to the middle, maybe swing a little bit towards more from a hybrid side.
I think it is a pendulum. I agree it's a pendulum, but it's not a short-term pendulum. This is a long-term swing. And if you look across history, look at people who've been at this a while, I think we can all identify these kind of trends, whether it's work at home or economic downturn times, and those are roughly 5 to 10 to 15 year cycles. So I wouldn't rest my laurels on this getting, people, going too far in a year. I think 5 years, when they figure out they've gone too far, perhaps they'll do something about it.
But remember that work at home was driven by a significant event in the history of the Western world. It was driven by a disease that was killing people. And so part of the pandemic and part of keeping people at home was, hey, don't come into the office and catch a sickness and die because you might hold us liable.
Or we won't have you as a cog in the wheel in the future. Although we know that eventually it comes up to Cogswell cogs in the future.
Or Spacely sprockets. When I woke up this morning, I didn't think we would end up with the Jetsons at some point. All in, gentlemen, if you were advising someone entering the job market today, oh my God, you turned on your camera, Daniel.
I pushed the wrong button. I pushed a button.
It's okay. We like seeing you. You don't have to keep it on if it bothers you.
It's okay. I can do exceptions,
Yeah.
But I don't do tears.
So if you were advising someone that was graduating and entering the workforce at the end of the summer, in 3 or 4 days before it starts to snow, what would you tell them about the workplace?
Well, just especially if you're entering the workforce, just follow directions. Don't start making your own rules. If I were to start over again, one thing that I've learned, and I'm going off topic, is that one of my friends told me 2 ways to make money: you do crime, or you go work international and avoid paying taxes. And I would go for going to work international, but that's a bit off topic. It's something that I've never done, and I wish I would have done, because it's a nice way to make money.
Interesting. Where would you have gone?
Anywhere that pay me.
There you go.
Even in a war zone, I would go in a war zone. You're like protected by the United Nations, something like that. Because I'm a bit of a coward.
You're a braver human being than I. I actually turned down a gig in Israel during the first Intifada.
Shucks.
I said no. Yeah, but that's me. I really. Getting up in the morning, working in the compound. I know the compound that I was going to get in actually ended up getting hit like 3 or 4 times with missiles, but nobody died. But I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, but one thing I wouldn't do now is go work in the States. I don't want to be caught by the ICE agent.
Well, okay, I hear you. I would. That might not be a piece of advice I would give either.
I'm just kidding. But anyway.
So what? The rest of you, what advice would you give other than go international?
I
For
do
me,
struggle.
oh,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I do struggle with that. My nephew recently went into the workforce, and he got kind of a traditional job, but he's doing it remotely. And I don't think that's what he planned on.
Yeah.
And in fact, the company closed the office he was working out of. I think before this, whatever we call it, compression, contraction, changing back to in the office roles, I think, Tom, I struggle with this, but I think you do have a point that I can't do this right in the screen, but we wedge down to a smaller set of jobs that is working traditionally, working the opposite way, working remotely. And maybe some of the traditional stuff comes back, but then I wonder about which industries are growing the most. Does that compensate for it? When people go do startups and make things we never knew we needed, a lot of that work has been done. Actually, one of the two ways, right? Either remotely or people do put 130 hours in the office and invent a new game that people say, hey, this is great. And we didn't know we needed this, but people buy it. So that creates a job market.
True.
So it's kind of both ends of the spectrum. I don't know what's in between.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. If someone enters a market, I would tell them, go with the new trends, go with the new stuff. Don't get stuck working with COBOL or stuff like that.
It's probably a true statement, albeit it still exists, but yeah, that's got to be a shrinking market. Jeremy, you were about to go.
For me, my advice would be you find an outlet to burn off any sort of stress. Because especially if you're starting out, like when I started out, whatever shift, whatever work needed to be done, I would do it. I would work. If they wanted me to work 40 hours, I would do it. Just because I want to get my foot in the door. I'm knowing that all the hard work will pay off at some point down the road. And it would be more like focus on your well-being and your stress. And then that's how you're going to be able to handle what comes at you in whatever environment. Because without that, you're just going to burn yourself. You're going to work your butt off. You're going to burn yourself out. And then you're either going to quit, you're going to go on stress leave, or you're going to get an ulcer. If you have a young family, a wife, girlfriend, partner, whatever, they're not going to be happy that you're miserable and then move forward. Like for me, when we talk about going into the office over this past little while, I was thinking about this today in the car. And I've noticed that when I sit in my office and just do my work and talk to my clients and not go out a lot, I gain a boatload of weight. And I've noticed there was like last time where I went into a client's office often and went in, I was down 30 pounds to what I am now. So I know there's an impact. Now, I focused a lot over the past year and a half on my mental well-being and how I focus on my stress. And I'm starting to lose my weight again. I'm getting back into it. But I know once I start going back to more client sites and going out more often, I'm probably going to drop my weight down a lot easier because I'm just going to be focused on my well-being going through.
Yeah, going back to work physically has positive health impacts.
And I'll add on, I think great advice from all the panelists. I'll add on, do your homework about the places you're applying. Understand as much as you can about the company. I think that most companies have LinkedIn presences where, yes, they have marketing material, but if you dig a little bit, whether it's on LinkedIn or another site, you can usually find some legit feedback from either employees that are currently there, ex-employees that are hopefully not too jaded and jilted, and hopefully get a sense of what the place is like, whether it's a smoke and mirrors work-life balance kind of place where once you join in, it's like Pinocchio and Pleasure Island. You get whisked away, and all of a sudden you're turning into a donkey. But like, I think that would be the thing that I would recommend, and that ties into the whole work-life balance, remote work kind of thing. You got to understand a little bit about the places you're applying, and then also understand what you really value and what you're willing to compromise on.
Glassdoor is a good site too.
Yes, I agree.
Again, all of that's phenomenal advice. I would also urge people to recognize that what's important today and what's important 10 years from now, what's important 20 years from now, are probably different things. Perhaps burning the candle on multiple ends might be an approach that's okay early on, might not be in the middle years. It might be again at the end. Who knows? And I like the idea of spending the introspective time to know. Gentlemen, again, this is always a phenomenal way, at least for me, to close up the week. I enjoy these conversations. Yeah, this time I had to play the John Quigley card and actually be the sort of the anti-hero. Again, thank you for spending an hour having this conversation with the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners. By the way, if people wanted to reach out to you individually, where would they go about doing that? How would they find you?
You can go on my site, agileagonist.com, and I'll be there.
All right. I'll have that link in the show notes.
For me, it's probably best to use Bradley Bittorf in LinkedIn.com. And if I don't think there's another one out there. I have a cousin with the same name, or second, third cousin, something like that. But I think I'm the only one on there.
Well, definitely, that's definitely in the show notes every time that you're on. And so I'll make sure that gets bolded.
I mean, LinkedIn's the best place to find me. It's LinkedIn, Jeremy Willets. I don't think there's any other folks like me with my name out there.
Mr. Barrio?
And for me, at LinkedIn, Jeremy Barrio. I believe I'm the only one there.
No.
Oh, no. There might be a second one.
Yeah, there are. There is.
There might be another one. That's right. I remember I did a volleyball tournament once, and they were calling it Jeremy Barrio, and I found out that's when I had my name twin. And you can also find me on my website at barryoandassociates.com.
Again, gentlemen, phenomenal way to carve out an afternoon. I'm going to go back to doing some writing and perhaps watching the World Championships of Pokemon Go on Twitch, and that's going to be my work-life balance. Or maybe I'll make ratatouille. I don't know. It's about that time. Start chopping.
Good time.
It has been phenomenal. Thank you again. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 878, we'll be discussing why involving others when changing a team or organization makes a ton of sense. The same isn't necessarily true when changing yourself. Why this matters? Understanding boundaries and what you control is important for owning your own productivity. The SPaMCAST 878 will post in 2 weeks. If you'd like to participate, leave us a message at spamcastinfo@gmail.com. We look forward to the conversation. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?